As we're coming into spring and looking forward to all the blossoms coming out, I thought it'd be nice to do a cherry tree today, but I wanted to do it more in the style of Vincent Van Gogh because obviously he did lots of blossom trees. I will put some pictures of those here. And he loved nature, obviously, and if we look at the way he works in all these little short lines, but he really brings to life and whatever it is he's painting. And I think he probably sat in front of the cherry trees as he was doing them. So wanted to kind of get a little bit of that in, and I'm just doing this on a plain piece of card, just ordinary A4 card, nothing fancy, and I've put a margin. It's always a good idea to start with a margin. This is just the width of a ruler, because later on, if you've got that margin there, it's much easier. If you do decide you want to frame it or put a mount on it, it makes it much easier to do when you've got that margin there. But you don't have to do it. You can paint just right up to the edge of the card if you prefer. So that's an A4 piece of ordinary card, and then the colours I've got here, I've got cobalt blue, and I've got cadmium yellow, titanium white, which is the white I use all the time, and alizarin crimson. And these are soft-bodied acrylics from Liquitex, but you can use whichever acrylics you have. But I would suggest just sticking to a few colours. It makes life simpler if we just stick to those few colours and mix the other ones we need from those. So as long as you've got your three primaries of red, yellow and blue with your white added, you don't need to use the same ones as me. Pick whichever reds, yellow and blue you prefer. I wanted the nice bright yellow there because we've got a lot of bright grass at the bottom there, and I tend to make things perhaps a little bit brighter than they are in reality. So I'll just pop those to one side. I've also got, I should say, off to the side there, 2 pots of nice clean water, because we always want to be working with clean brushes. Don't add water to your acrylics. If you add water to your acrylics, all you're doing is lessening that colour and diluting your colours, so your painting won't be as strong. So don't add water to them. Just have the water there to give your brushes a really good clean off between colours. So if we look at the way Van Gogh worked, he really, how I would describe it is he's drawing with his paint. So if we look at his drawings, everything is done in lots of little lines all over. But although these are straight lines, a lot of them are straight lines, he's making lots of life and movement and curls into that. So of course you don't have to do it in this style, you can do it in your own style, but it was just something I thought would be nice to work towards. So if we look at this one here, not lots of colours, all those nice greens, so it's used a lot of blue and yellow obviously to make the greens, and then the blues and the yellows in there as well. And lots of lines all over, even in the skies, and you'll be familiar with these skies. You're probably more used to having a big flat brush and putting a nice wash of sky across something nice and flat. And it might seem a little bit alien to work in this way, building your sky up with these little lines, but it's very effective. So yeah, that's what I thought we would do today. Just a few colours, pick your 3 primary colours and white, and then let's have a go at building up this cherry tree in this kind of style, drawing with the paints as we go along. So we're not going to put a colour on that card to begin with, we're not going to work on a ground, we're just going to go straight in and have a bit of fun with the acrylic paint. So you can see here lots and lots of straight lines in his face, but it still builds up that 3D face because of the way he's used those to go around and to build it up. And it's a bit like he's got a halo on there, hasn't it, the way it goes around, but it gets movement. And the other thing we've need to look at here, this is a particularly good example, is the space. Don't be frightened when you're painting to leave some space. It's good to have that space around your subject as well. So in this case we've got all this green at the bottom, and it's going to give us that space around that single tree. You could choose a different photograph to work from. I got this one off Pixabay, and I will link down below the link to this one, but there are also many more on there. So if you type in spring blossom or spring cherry into Pixabay, you will find lots and lots of free reference photographs to use of the blossom that's coming in now. I'm going to begin with the trunk. I'm not going to do any drawing in pencil, any preparatory drawing. and it doesn't matter if every single branch isn't exactly where it is. We're getting a feel for the tree, we're not taking a photograph. But I'm going to start by drawing the central part of the tree, because that's, you know, that's the focus of this painting. So we need to go really nice and dark for some of these branches, and alizarin's a good colour for getting nice and dark with the blue there. So of course you've got a deep mauve there. So if you want to make that more of a brown, you're going to add into that your yellow. You can see we've put too much yellow in there, so now it's gone green. So what you're doing all the time when you're mixing your colours up, it's a bit like when you're making pastry and it's too wet, you add a bit more flour. In this case, because it's too green, the opposite side of the colour wheel to green is red, so we need to add a little bit more red to come back towards the brown. And you could carry on with this for ages, going either one direction or the other, two brown, two green, two red, two blue, but it's just finding what you like there, getting that nice brown. So yeah, it's very good practice to just have your three colours and practice mixing some of these browns and greys and greens from the ones that you've chosen. So we're going to start with this, and like I say, we don't have to worry too much about it being exactly as it is. Now for this bottom part, I'm going to add some white in. So all I'm doing there is I'm keeping this here, but I'm adding a little bit of white to this. And we're going right down to the bottom, and I'm using quite a small brush and starting with those lines and drawing. And the great thing, if you're new to acrylics, the great thing about them is you can just go over them if it all goes wrong. If you're not happy with what you've done, you can paint over it afterwards. So I'm just wondering whether I actually need even a smaller brush than this, but for me this is going to make the process a little bit quicker having this size. If you do something smaller, if you want your lines to be more defined, you might be working on a bigger sheet of paper anyway. And I only use cheap brushes really with my acrylics. I don't use very expensive brushes because they do over time get sort of spoilt. Now, as well as going downwards, you want to go around as well. So it's a little bit lighter down here, and then as you go up it goes darker when it's in the canopy of those, all that blossom. And if you want to leave some branches out to make it less complicated, then you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to carry on building this up, and I'll come back to you when we start putting some of those pinks in. Okay, I just wanted to stop there to say do look at some of the colours in the trunk, because here obviously you get lichen on old trees as well. So here we've got a little bit of yellow and green in, if you can see that. So it might be nice at this stage to add a bit more colour. Lots of these little twiggy branches here, we might need a finer brush. You'll see I've gone down a size in brush. I think I set off with too big a brush. Like I say, it's really good drawing practice is this. This isn't as wide, I've got a different format here. I should have put a bit more thought into that. You can do that, but it doesn't matter. We're just doing, we're making a painting. We're not, I've said this lots and lots of times before in my videos, we're not doing a photograph, we're making an artwork. So as long as it looks and feels like the thing it's supposed to be, don't worry too much about that. If you're one of those people that likes things to be photorealistic, then that's absolutely fine as well. So you'll see that paint went quite a long way, that initial brown that we made, but you can obviously make more up as you go along. We're going to need a bit more dark for, like I say, lots of these little twiggy bits, so I'll carry on with that. But I just wanted to stop to say, do think about adding some extra bits of yellow and green to the trunk as well to make it come to life. I'm going to move on now, but we could carry on that with that for ages because there's so many little twiggy branches, and we can put some of those back in afterwards. Now, as I just said before, we're making an artwork, we're not taking a photograph. And if we look at the photograph, the sky behind is very white and flat and boring. It's quite a dull day, despite the light on the grass. And I think it'd be nice to inject a little bit of blue into that sky. So I'm going to go on now and pop some blue in, and then I'm going to pop the pink on top. So I'm not going to put blue everywhere, but I'm just going to start and put blue patches in. So if you're a beginner, one of the mistakes we can make when we're painting things like trees and grass and the landscape is we know that these blossoms are made up of lots of little petals. We know the shape of the blossom. We've got the leaves in there as well. We know the shape of them. And because our mind knows the shape, we tend to default to trying to draw each blossom instead of looking at what our eye can see, which is just very basic shapes of that pink. So if you were sat across a field from a tree at a distance, you would not be able to see every individual blossom or leaf. So if you want to be a bit more impressionistic, a bit looser with your paintings, just keep that in mind. Don't get bogged down in trying to draw each blossom and each leaf. Just look at the basic shapes, squint your eyes, reduce it a bit to those basic shapes and those blobs of pink. And the overall effect, once we've got all that in, will be of blossom, but we won't have every single petal drawn. So we're still drawing, and this is what I like about this style, is it's good drawing practice. So we're not really painting in a way, we're drawing with the paint. And like I say, I went onto that smaller brush. So I'll stop talking and waffling on now and go back to putting some of that blue in. So the blue I used there was the cobalt with a lot of white added to it. I've just used the same blue all the way throughout, but if you wanted to, you could vary your sky a little bit. You could make it so that there was a few different depths of blue, some lighter and darker areas, but I've just made it that flat blue all the way across. So whilst that dries a little bit before we start and think about putting the pink on, I'm going to go down to the ground, and as we come back to those lines I was talking about, like I said, I've gone for the smaller brush now, and that's making it a bit easier to get that feel of those lines. All this grass is nice long grass, and it's going vertically, so we can get lots of nice vertical lines. This area here is a bit scrubby. There's even a signpost or something back here. Just ignore all that and do whatever you want to do here. Put some different shrubs and bushes in different yellows and greens. So just think about varying the greens that you've got there. Lots more yellow in some areas and more blue in others to get the light and the shade. So I'll just stop at this point and show you what's happening on my plate here. So I've got the green here with the yellow and the blue, and all I'm doing all the time is just adding a little bit of each one into that to make it either more yellow or more blue. So you've got the green there, same little patch all the time, just adding these two into it. So I end up with quite a messy plate, but I just wanted you to see how I was working there. And at some point in some of these yellows here, towards the end, I'm going to add a little bit of white again to brighten that up a bit. We're going to move on to doing the pink for the blossom, and we'll just do exactly the same as we did with the green there and the yellows and the blues. Just mix some pink up to begin with, and then to that we'll keep adding either more white or more red to make it darker or lighter. If you want to go a bit darker still, you could add some of your blue into there to get a bit more variety of colour, but basically that's all we're doing. We'll just pull those colours across and keep mixing so we get a lot of variety in the blossom there. There isn't just blossom in the tree, there's one or two leaves just come out, but we'll put those on afterwards. Okay, so you'll see there's a little bit of card still showing through. If you want to cover the whole page up and you don't want any of that card showing through, you can sort that out later. But just getting all those different colours, the different shades of green in there is making quite a pretty little, you know, base to this tree. And it gives us a lot of space around the tree. So don't forget about space in your paintings. You don't have to be filling everything, just that nice little bit of green space there for your eye to rest. Okay, so I'll go ahead now. This could take some time. Like I say, we're not doing every blossom, we're just doing lots of little blobs and dashes and shapes, keeping to that same style to give us the feel for this pink blossom. I could carry on a lot more with that, and I need to, but I'm just going to start and pop one or two of the leaf bits of colours in as well. So that yellow, sorry, that green that we had on the palette, what I've done is added a tiny touch of red to that, because the leaves on the cherry tree have got a little touch of that red in them. There aren't that many leaves come out. Of course, the blossom comes out before the leaves, so it's just here and there, one or two quite distinct leaves, but we don't need to put lots and lots in and cover that pink. So at this stage we've got to be very careful that it doesn't get too muddy. We're going over colours all the time because we're popping the leaves and the petals over the top of those stems and over the top of the sky, so we're trying not to get muddy with this. By muddy I mean, you know, when you get all your colours mixed together and things get a little bit, it's a nice colour that I'm just going to put some in the base here. Yeah, so the colours end up looking like mud because we've overworked it and put too much on. So at this stage you want to slow down a little bit, step back from your work, have a think about what you need to correct, where you need to add more and take more away. I'd like to get a little bit of sky back in places actually, and down here this is a bit more dappled. There's something going on here with some shrubs and things in the background, so let's just get some more over there. So yeah, there are different things you might want to be doing at this stage, but step back and take your time, don't rush anything. Just have a look, see where you think it needs altering and adding to. I'm going to take a break now and go for some lunch, and when I come back I'm going to have a good look at it from a distance, see where I needed to add more light and shade, and see what I think it needs that it's missing. So it's a good idea to step away from your work and have a little think about it. So I'll pop that to one side, but as you can see I've got all this paint left on here that we're going to need again later. So if you've got a spray bottle, just give it a tiny spritz, and whilst you have your lunch, that will keep that moist. And you can also, if you want to, pop a piece of cling film over, or if you've got a container that an airtight container that your plate will fit into, that's also a good idea, just to keep those there until after lunch. Okay, so we'll have a good think about it, like I said, where we need some more light and shade maybe. But I think using this technique of using just the lines and the dashes and drawing as we go along with the paint is particularly useful for trees, because it gives a kind of dappled light effect just by altering those colours a little bit, just by putting them extra bits of white into the pink and darker in places as well. So it gives a dappled feel without you really having to try, because of the way that you're working. Okay, so I'll be back after lunch to do some finishing touches to this. The other good thing about having a break is now everything is completely dry. So whilst we've been having lunch, that's dried, and we can go back on top of that quite easily. So there's just a few things I want to sort of tidy up with this a little bit. I want less of the white card showing through, so some of the more of the blue and the pink, and I want to get more contrast between the very darkest and the very lightest areas. So in some places I'm going to go a bit darker, and in others a little bit lighter. But other than that, I'm not going to do too much more. I'm going to put one or two more branches back in with the dark whilst I've got that as well. But apart from that, I'm not going to overdo this. So I'll just carry on and do a little bit more, and then we'll come back and have a chat about it at the end. Now I think the biggest problem here is knowing when to stop and overdoing it, so I'm going to leave this now. Of course you could try working from a different photograph. You could try doing this in a different medium or on a different surface with different colours. So there's all sorts of things you can do with this technique. Like I say, I will link some of those photographs that I found on Pixabay, but if you do put in there spring blossom or something like that, you're going to get hundreds of reference photographs that you can use with these beautiful trees. So I'm really looking forward to the blossom coming out in our garden. We've got apples, damsons, cherries, and the magnolia is probably the last one to come out, but it's something nice to look forward to at this time of year. So you can see I've got a very messy plate at the end of that, but with just these three colours and the white, you've got lots of variety of tone in there, going from those darks to those lights, to get a little bit of movement and rhythm and vibrancy in a very simple picture of one single tree. So keep it simple, don't overthink it, don't do any drawing before you start, just go straight in with your paints. You can paint over if you go wrong with your drawing, but just see it as a drawing exercise where you're practicing your drawing. And like I've kept saying, it is not a photograph. You don't have to be entirely accurate with every single branch, leaf, bit of blossom. Just get an impression for the overall feel of that abundance of the blossom, all that heavy weight of all those petals on such a small tree, and that dappled light, that spring light that's starting to hit the ground there, bouncing around through those branches. So yeah, we're getting a feel for it. We're trying to be a bit impressionistic and creating an individual artwork, not slavishly copying a photograph. So I hope you found that useful, especially those of you that are new to acrylics, that are beginners. This is something that you can all have a go at. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. If you think things are going wrong a little bit and you're not happy with it, leave it for an hour or so, put it on the side, go and do something else and come back to it, and then your eye will pick up where you want to make changes. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. I'll be back again with you soon. In the meantime, you enjoy your painting and drawing. Thanks for watching, and bye bye for now.